Intercepts of a graph. So the intercepts of a graph are where the graph touches the x or y axis. So we have x-intercepts, we have y-intercepts. This is the graph from the Wikipedia article graphs. Just a basic graph here. We're going to talk about the x and y-intercepts of it. So anywhere where the graph, which is this blue line here, anywhere the graph touches the x-axis, that is going to be an x-intercept. So right here, that's going to be an x-intercept. Right here at -1, so here's -4. There's one here at -1, and another here at 2. Plot those points. Those are all x-intercepts. If you notice the coordinate points for the places where there are x-intercepts, you have the coordinate point -4, 0, -1, 0, and 2, 0. So in every case, the y-coordinate is 0. And that's just true of x-intercepts. That's one way you could define an x-intercept, where the y-coordinates value is 0. So in order to be lying on the x-axis, you need to have a y-coordinate of 0. For a y-intercept, that's when we cross the y-axis. So we cross it down here at -2. This is -2. There's a y-intercept. It is the only y-intercept of this graph. And that's at the point 0, -2. So what you'll notice is that y-intercepts are always going to have an x-coordinate that's 0, and x-intercepts are always going to have a y-coordinate that's 0. I'll write that down. The y-intercept is going to have 0 for x and then some value for y. And for that x-intercept, there'll be some value for x, but y will be 0. Something to mention here is that sometimes when we're asking for x-intercepts and y-intercepts, we're looking for the value. So sometimes when I'm asking for x-intercepts, it's okay to just kind of be lazy and say -4, -1, and 2 are the x-intercepts of this graph, and -2 is the y-intercept of this graph. Other times, problems are going to be more specific and ask for the coordinate points of the x and y-intercepts. And when you are asked for the coordinate points of the x and y-intercepts, you're looking at this full formal name. So if you're asked for the coordinate points of the x-intercepts, it would be -4, 0, -1, 0, 2, 0. But in most cases, when you're asked for x and y-intercepts, it's simply the value. So the y-intercepts -2, the x-intercepts are -4, -1, and 2. Now, we can also find our x and y-intercepts algebraically. So I have on here from a previous video the work that we did for these two problems, which was from the graphing video. I want to talk about finding those x and y-intercepts algebraically. Noticing here, we could find one of these intercepts nicely, right? In fact, right here, there's 0, -2, that's the y-intercept. But this x-intercept's a little bit harder for me to tell what it is. So what we do, if we look back up here, the y-intercept is where x is 0. The x-intercept is where y is 0. So to find y-intercepts, we plug in x equal to 0. And then to find x-intercepts, we plug in y equal to 0. So plug in x equal to 0 and solve for y to find y-intercepts. And you plug in y equals 0 and solve. Oops, I did that backwards. Boop, boop. There we are. For the y-coordinate, plug in x equals 0, solve for y. For the x-coordinate, plug in y equals 0, solve for x. So looking here at the equation, y equals 3x minus 2. For the x-intercept, we're plugging in y equal to 0. So let y equal 0. So we have 0 is equal to 3x minus 2. If I add 2 to both sides, I'm going to get 2 equals 3x. Dividing both sides by 3, get x is equal to 2/3. So x equal to 2/3 is our x-intercept. So right here, this is the point 0, comma, not 0, comma, 2/3, comma, 0. The x-intercept is 2/3. We know what the y-intercept is already for this one because we already graphed it. It's at 0, -2, but let's do it anyway. So let x equal 0. Again, we're using this equation, y equals 3x minus 2. So we have y equals 3 times 0 minus 2, y equal to -2. So 0, -2 is the y-intercept. Going down a little further, looking at y equals x squared. The x-intercept, again, is when y is equal to 0. So looking at y equals x squared, if I let y equal 0, so we have 0 equals x squared. If you take the square root on both sides, you're going to get 0 is equal to x, which makes sense, right? Looking at this picture, it appears that the x-intercept and the y-intercept are both going to be at 0, 0. For the y-intercept, letting x equal 0. So we have y equals 0 squared, y equals 0. X and y-intercept are the same in this case. So big idea, the x-intercepts are where the graph touches the x-axis. When that happens, y is equal to 0. The y-intercepts are where the graph touches the y-axis, and that's when x is equal to 0. And that is all I have to say about intercepts.